The Ottomans, during the height of their empire from the 1400s to the 1700s, deployed a unique military formation that played heavily into its multiple strengths. These were, firstly, its large cavalry force. It's important to remember the Ottomans were a heavily cavalry-dependent army, in fact, more so than infantry would ever play until the reforms. Secondly, the Janissaries, elite infantry whose strength relied heavily on its discipline and loyalty. However, while unique and very effective, they were just a subunit of the Kapakula or the household forces. And thirdly, was the deployment of mass mobile artillery for both offensive and defensive engagements. During battle deployment, the main force would organize themselves around the Sultan in a way which was completely different to his deployment while on the march. An interesting note is that deployment on the battlefield and the camping arrangements were the same. During battle and at the camp, to the Sultan's immediate right, he would be followed by a 400-strong unit of his elite bodyguard, the Solaks, or lefties, an elite archer unit made up of specifically left-handed Janissaries. The reason for this is that it would be disrespectful for the right-hand archers to turn their backs on the Sultan while drawing their bowstring. Directly in front of the main cavalry will be the Janissary squads and cannoneer corps of the household. In front of these were a very large screening force of irregular Azabs and other provincial forces. Akinji or light horse archer type units would also be ahead of these to test for weaknesses and harass enemy units well before the Ottoman main force would engage. It is important to remember Akinji are not to be confused with light cavalry. They were more akin to cavalry skirmishers. To the immediate left and right of the forces were the large units of provincial Sipahi. Depending on the location of the campaign, the position on the right would be occupied by the local forces. For example, in a campaign in Hungary, Rumeli Sipahi, or Sipahi from the Greek region, would take the right side. One reason for this is due to the numerical superiority of the local forces. The exact dates and numbers involved in the changes of personal strength of the Sipahis are unknown today, but at the peak of their power, during the last quarter of the 16th century, they had reached a strength of 83,550. And if the armed retainers are added to the numbers, increased to more than 100,000. The Asian province Sipahi provide 42,855 Sipahis, while the European ones provide 40,695. However, the provinces were never able to provide more than 70,000 Sipahi with their armed retainers at once because of geographical distances and other demanding military and administrative tasks. A requirement to leave 1/10 of their numbers to take care of their estates, and finally, individual excused absences. So in any given campaign, the numbers would normally be about 40,000 to 50,000 strong. The limits on the total mobilization of the Sipahi actually produced an important advantage, which was to leave a large reserve force at home that could be used in emergency situations. The remaining provincial Sipahis on the left wing were usually of inferior numerical strengths, then simply reinforced either left or right wing as necessary. To the left and right flanks of the Sultan are the elite yet smaller forces of household horsemen, or Kapakula Suvari, as they were known in Turkish. They were divided into 6 units: the left and right poor fellows, the left and right salaried men, the Silahtar, and the Sipah. These units were generally more heavily armored and better mounted with more standardized equipment compared to provincial Sipahis. In the front were the main force of Sipah and Silahtar units, followed by the right salaried men, and finally the right poor fellows, and vice versa, with the Silahtar on the left followed by the left salaried men and poor fellows. These units would reinforce either flanks of the army when needed, while also protecting the important baggage train. The Ottomans modified the Hussite Wagenburgen tactics and techniques in their Tabur Cengi, in place of the protection and defensive role of Western European pikeman formations for the arquebus and musket-carrying infantry. The Ottomans used the wagons of the Arabajiz, or the cannoneer corps, Obviously, in comparison to the European pikeman and musketeer formation, the Tabur Cengi was a more defensive and static battle formation. Due to its custom-built wagons, however, it had a better and faster long-distance transportation capability. Whereas pikemen marched carrying their own heavy equipment and often arrived tired, so it could be said the Ottomans sacrificed tactical mobility in order to achieve strategic mobility. Against all these limitations, we know that on several occasions the Tabur Cengi was used offensively, like a mobile fortress, slowly but destructively attacking the enemy battle formation. The basic mechanism of the Tabur was simple but very difficult to apply. Before the start of the battle war wagons were chained together and cannons were placed within. Several Janissary units armed with heavy muskets were also positioned with the cannoneers, and the remaining Janissaries, several rows deep, remained within the formation. The Ottoman wings, by outflanking or feigned retreats, would try to force the main body of the enemy army towards the fortress. The Azab screen would retreat immediately, after showing brief resistance in order to disorganize the enemy attack. Artillery and heavy Ottoman-style muskets would fire first and further wear down the enemy and disorganize its assault formations. Then the Janissaries, with light weapons, began firing in volleys by rotating the ranks. Finally, a counterattack would then start, when the enemy lost cohesion and heart. The success of this battle formation depended upon the constant practice of combined arms and strict discipline. Any disharmony or failure would result in certain disaster. Unfortunately today, the exact details of the tactical application, and especially the role of the Arabajir or Cannoneer Corps, and the design of their wagons are missing. The Tabur achieved a frightening reputation among the rivals of the Ottomans, in the east and the west. The Hungarians and Habsburgs tried to create their own versions of the Tabur, or to invent methods to counter it, like the pike-based formations of Giorgio and Raimondo. The Safavids of Persia learned their lesson dearly after the catastrophic defeat against the Ottomans at the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514. Surprisingly, the Safavids created their own tabur and used it successfully against the nomadic Uzbek army in the Battle of Jam in 1527. The reputation of the tabur reached even to India, and the founder of the Mughal dynasty, Babur Khan, who fought allied with the Safavids, gained the victory and used it in his own application. Babur, who recorded several accounts of the battle in his memoir, describes the Safavid center as a raid in Rumi fashion, with matchlock and cart, or cart and culverin and matchlock men. The tabur proved the effectiveness of combined arms of the infantry, cavalry, and artillery that the Ottomans had put to great use, defeating both the European and nomadic-style armies on multiple occasions. Well developed beyond the growing pains they experienced at the Battle of Kosovo or the Timurid invasions. Well developed beyond the growing pains they experienced at the Battle of Kosovo or the Timurid invasions. On the next episode, we will continue our discussion on the next segment of the Ottoman provincial forces, the marchland units.